You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine, so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. Before we jump into it, Jeff, how are we doing this week?
I am well, David. And yourself?
Quite well, Jeff, quite well.
Excellent.
I hope to continue such wellness as we endeavor through this podcast. Anna, we're really working on keeping these intros tight.
Yeah, we've shown that we're really good at that.
Yeah. It's like all the non-scripted banter works 100% of the time.
Yeah, we don't practice it offline either. It's just this good every time.
We go from having great civil banter just before producer Eric says, "One, you're live." And then as soon as the camera starts rolling, it's like, "How are you, Anna?" Exactly.
How else are you supposed to answer that?
I don't know. Just like, what's going on? It's been just kind of mix it up a little bit. Give me a little, I'm good. It's been a good day. It's a little rainy, whatever.
Pretend
we
we're at
always end up talking about the weather. I feel like that's also monotonous.
Yeah.
Pretend you're at a networking event, Jeff.
Yeah, we'll just work.
How do you network?
Hey, so what do you guys do here?
Do you want my card? Oh, he still uses cards. Yeah. So, Jeff, what do you do here? You're right. We're gonna have to mix it up a little bit as we get ready to go to a couple of trade shows.
What would you say?
Gotta work on it. If you were a tree, what tree would you be? Don't talk to that man in the corner. All right. Before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you once again by Rockwell Automation, which wants to help you gain unlimited HMI visualization options. This new video podcast, now available on demand, highlights Rockwell's recent rollout of FactoryTalk Optix, a new cloud-enabled HMI product. According to the company, this latest offering centers on improving processes, efficiency, and deliverables by providing new levels of collaboration, scalability, and interoperability. Download the podcast now. There's a link in the body copy. There's a link in the comments. Download it now. Our first story this week. Electric truck maker Rivian says construction on Georgia factory will proceed in 2024. California-based electric truck maker Rivian made an announcement last Thursday as it opened a new retail location in an Atlanta development. The company is moving forward with a new factory in Georgia starting next year. Right now, Rivian makes the R1T pickup and the R1S SUV at a factory in Normal, Illinois. Each retails for more than $70,000. The company's plans east of Atlanta include a $5 billion manufacturing complex where it hopes to eventually make the cheaper R2. The complex could create up to 7,500 jobs at this site near Social Circle, Georgia. And yes, that is an actual town. It's really got a thing for towns, being in Social Circle and Normal. Rivian has an incentive package on the table from state and local governments worth an estimated $1.5 billion. The first phase of Rivian's factory will make 200,000 vehicles a year starting next year. The second phase is going to double production by 2030. Anna, the R2 is scheduled to be unveiled next year. What are your expectations for this low-cost Rivian?
Well, I hope that it works out for them. Next year seems a little bit tight for this factory.
Yeah, considering they're just leveling the ground right now in late October 2023. 200,000 cars by next year. That seems aggressive.
It does. I like how they're trying to be super positive too and being like, we have almost finished grading the dirt. Like, okay, so not a single brick has been laid. Okay.
We haven't had a crazy protest in nearly 4 months.
Yeah, it just sounds like a quick turn. But I do think that the timing of this announcement was not accidental. When you look at General Motors announcing just this past week that they have pushed back plans to convert a plant into an electric pickup truck factory that was supposed to take place in 2024. And I think it was maybe a good way for Rivian to kind of quietly reinforce that it's not experiencing some delays, maybe not beholden to some of the same labor issues that the big three are currently facing. There have been efforts to unionize the normal plant, both by the UAW and the Machinists Union.
Okay.
But they have not come to fruition at this point. And I think they would have even less of a chance of achieving that goal in the South. So maybe this is Rivian's way of being like, hey, look, we're here. We're doing this. We got no problems. We're moving forward. I think scale is so important for these companies for many reasons. But, Jeff mentioned this recently. How many Rivians have you seen lately driving through town? Yeah. I think they got to get these vehicles on the road, because every time you see one, that's sort of a vote of confidence for that technology. Mm-hmm. So, as quick as they can get these up and going, the better. Yeah, 200,000 by end of next year. I don't know. The other thing about the article that I thought was interesting is they talked a little bit about what they called spaces. That they're adding some. They just opened a new space, and it sounds like they're the equivalent of like a Tesla showroom. They have to sell online, but it's a way for people to come in, kick the tires, take a test drive, stuff like that.
It's hip.
It's hip.
Because it's a space.
Because it's called a space.
Not a storefront.
But very important, especially in the EV market, because I think there's still a lot of questions, concerns, misinformation out there. People who are new to this technology need that stuff addressed. And that's a lot of your customer base is people that are new to this technology.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to be able to, nobody wants to buy that car online without knowing, like, hey, how do I charge it? What do I do? Who can I talk to about all these questions that I have? So so that's another way I think that they're trying to like help boost, demand for that product. And I don't know. Again, like it's ambitious as a goal, but exciting.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, in this like weird Price is Right version of predicting Rivian's future in Georgia, do you pick 200,000 cars next year or one?
I'm going to go with less than 200,000. Yeah, pretty aggressive. And I agree with Anna. I think the timing is not coincidental. Mm-hmm. I think there's definitely some strategies here, and it makes sense. I think, first of all, when you look at the background of this facility, I think they're just trying to get some positive vibes out there, some positive messaging. I mean, you had everything going on with the two Republican candidates for governor going back and forth. There's still a lot of public resistance to this facility. That hasn't gone away.
Right.
I mean, if you remember early on, it was the courts basically saying, hey, you guys still, even though you're getting all this money from the state, I think like $1.5 billion, you still need to like fill out the forms and do all the environmental studies and all of those things. So they've moved progressively past this, which is why they are excited that even if it's not super intense, they have leveled the dirt and they actually have a foundation to put a plant up. You know, they can actually proceed with doing that. So they should be excited about that. What's interesting is what's come out of late, though, is some plans potentially to also have an on-site battery manufacturing capabilities at this location. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Those folks around there, not real excited about that. They were already really unhappy that they're building this plant out in this very rural setting to begin with. So now when you're bringing in rare earth elements and you're dealing with lithium and all their concerns before about groundwater, those have only been escalated now. Mm-hmm. So Rivian does find itself in a very awkward situation here in terms of we finally got some good momentum going here. We just dropped this other bombshell on some of these folks who were not aware that this was also going to be part of the production dynamic. Hopefully it doesn't, for their sake, hopefully it doesn't cause them more delays, but you definitely could see that being the case. Yeah. You'd hope they checked all the boxes in terms of what they needed to do from an environmental and site preparation perspective. But a lot of people, including some of the regulatory bodies here, were surprised to hear this. And this just came out like in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So that's going to be interesting. I think part of the change in maybe climate has also come from the fact that we've seen a ton of stuff going on in the Southeast with new EV facilities, new battery manufacturing. So you have to wonder if the people in Georgia, even those who are very resistant to this facility, have a little bit of that fear of missing out going on here right now. Yeah. Because if Rivian doesn't build in Atlanta or in Georgia, there's a lot of places that'll welcome them with open arms. So it's a really interesting sort of operational dynamic in getting this place up and running.
Well, and there's a new industrial development going up on my way to work. And it's interesting to watch it as it slowly comes along. Like, it seems like it takes forever, right? They get the equipment there. They seem to tear out one tree a day. And it's just like this complex is supposed to be up by next year. So I'm sure it's about to get rolling. And when you talk about people that have been kind of pushing back on this, there have been a number of challenges to this development in court. And the biggest difference that I read was basically the entire town, which I get it. You know, the jobs would more than double the size of the town, which is about, 5,000 people. The town had all these signs up that said, "We don't want Rivian." And then when they lost the court battle, the only thing that changed was they replaced the signs that said, now say, "We still don't want Rivian." It's just like,
yay.
Okay. But I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's unfortunate for social circle, but, this is a big development for the Atlanta area. Rivian still faces questions about achieving profitability. And Anna, a little bit more on these spaces. That was obviously because they call it something hip and cool. I had to talk about that for a second because it's like, whoa. This isn't a store. We're not doing retail. This isn't a dealership. This is a space.
It's a space,
This is just a little Rivian space.
Yeah.
So it's the 8th. They opened this 8th one in a network of spaces, and they plan to expand in Colorado, Texas, and California. I mean, as we kind of talked about previously, the company only sells online, and this is to dodge Georgia's rules that require auto manufacturers to have dealers. And I don't know, it's I could see the allure of shopping in a space and then kind of customizing online. I kind of get that. And you're right, when it comes to something like a Rivian, you want to be sure of a purchase like that because maybe it might be a little easier with this low cost version that might be coming out in a year or two. But when you're buying a $70,000 or more car, I think you want to be a little bit more sure of that. So you need a safe space to make that decision. All right. Well, our next most popular story this week. And again, it was a kind of a mix of stories that all seem to line up. So there's obviously a lot of interest going on the UAW Big 3 strike and the updates that came out this week. So a pair of stories really lined up, and actually a third one is trending to be right in line with that as well. The first is that some wonder if UAW President Shawn Fain has reached too far, and the other is that auto workers striked at a Stellantis plant and shut down a big profit center. So, does Shawn Fain have an end game to bring the strikes to a close? People close to Fain say his approach reflects his blunt and straightforward manner that he developed as he rose through the union's ranks. Many say he's the right man for the moment. Others say that his, quote, audacious goals set him up for failure as weak settlements could hurt the union. Harley Shaken, a professor at UC Berkeley, says Fain has gotten, quote, far more from the companies than anyone, in particular the companies, may have expected. But now is the critical point where you pull the package together. This week also saw a series of escalations as the UAW targeted the cash cows, including a Stellantis plant that makes the Ram pickup truck in Sterling Heights, Michigan, and a GM plant in Texas that makes high-margin SUVs like the Tahoe and Cadillac Escalade. And, Anna, in a week that saw these escalations, Ford flinched.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question, did Shawn Fain reach too far, has been at least somewhat answered. Automotive News, when reporting on the deal struck between Ford and the UAW, which we just learned that late last night, they called it a stunning victory for the union. It includes 25% raises that amount to about 33% over 4.5 years when cost of living mechanisms are factored in. And it was an unexpected move that I think adds some pressure to GM and Stellantis to get this job done, because the UAW told Ford workers to return to their jobs during the ratification process. So they're saying that production of like Ford Super Duty pickups, Ford Bronco, and Explorer, Ranger trucks, that could all restart within this week. So if the pressure weren't enough now for Stellantis and GM to see their competition operational, experts also believe that the deals will fall into place soon enough based on the fact that they weren't so far apart before. So I would also add, that there has been some interesting color to the situation. Reuters published an article this morning where they also quoted Harley Shaken, who's an expert in this area. He's a labor professor, as you said, at UC Berkeley. He sees the deal as one with far-reaching implications and, quote, "This is a set of negotiations," he said, "historically where gains made in Detroit would be viewed and adapted by many other industries across the economy." He goes on even to suggest that the UAW may use this massive win as a lever to try to organize companies like Tesla. But there is some risk that if they don't, and if Shawn Fain is not successful in leveraging this in other areas, it could cause companies to leave Detroit because of that wage differential. And then, that would be a catastrophe.
Yeah, devastating.
So like the work is not over for the UAW, even once these deals are made. But I would say that, that quote, is he the right man for the moment? Maybe. I mean, he did do more than I expected. I think that's, if you look at how high he started, and we're like, you're never going to get close to that. I mean, it did give some room to kind of get closer to the middle and really come away with a really strong package for these employees.
Yeah, understanding that we still have a long road ahead, I would definitely say that, yes, he was the man for the moment, and he has risen to the occasion. Jeff, were you surprised by some of the terms that were outlined in Ford's package, and do you believe that Stellantis and GM will follow suit?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll talk about Shawn Fain, and then we can get to some of the longer-term, short-term sort of dynamics and what we learned from those other sort of OEs this week. When you look at Shawn Fain, and I've been pretty critical of him, I think the one thing you can say is he's very consistent. I think what a lot of people said, what you see is what you get. That does seem to be the case. You do have to give him credit in terms of what he accomplished from a pay perspective with Ford, especially with the way the rhetoric was just a week ago.
Yeah.
So definitely give him some credit there. However, I think Ford looks at this differently than GM and Stellantis. I think Ford has been much more transparent in terms of how the evolution to EVs is going to impact their workforce. They've already split them up. They've got blue and they've got EV, right?
It's blue and
combustion, whatever. Is
that
blue
one?
their EV sector? Okay.
Yeah.
So they basically split them up there already. So you have to wonder if Ford isn't looking at this as more of a short-term necessity. Do they see this as the same employees who are going to be there in 5 to 10 years that are going to be working on electric vehicles? A lot of them probably not. If you're in drivetrain, if you're looking on engine parts, things like that, no, I don't think you're seeing these employees as part of your long-term future. Now, when it comes to GM and Stellantis, I would say they're less enthusiastic on the transition to electric vehicles. When you look at, we ran a story earlier this week about all of the automakers that are transitioned or are compatible with Tesla's charging platform. Stellantis is still holding out. Okay. So it makes you wonder when they look at their labor force, they look at the negotiations and what's going on here, are they willing to play a longer term game? Because maybe they are going to be more reliant on these individuals to help them make that transition. Ford may not be looking at it that way. So they'll make some of these concessions in the short term, knowing there's going to be a different dynamic going forward. The other thing I thought was really interesting here and why I think GM and Stellantis may be on a different platform or perspective is we didn't hear anything about that 32-hour work week. We heard about bonuses for those who've retired, not necessarily a pension plan.
Right.
A bonus can mean very different things. So we'll see what's going to happen there. And they also really agreed to a much higher wage for temporary workers, which I thought was really interesting, like a 3x multiplier. So, or not 3x, 1.5. 1.5, 150%. So those things, I think, especially when you look at the temporary workforce, I think those are things that I would be very surprised if that is a cut and paste type situation. I could see some of the pay things going. But again, if you're looking at longer term with the same people, I think you're going to have a different perspective. And that's where I think GM and Stellantis are right now.
Yeah.
So I think Fain's still got his work cut out for him. But I think in terms of was he the right guy in the moment after all that crap they went through and all of the court cases, fraud, everything else, all the scandals that were going on with the UAW, they did need somebody like this to sort of be their spokesperson who had a more blue collar,
practical
perspective and background too.
Yeah. So it's Ford Model E is the EV, Ford Blue is internal combustion engine, and then Ford Drive. Okay. And part of the point that you brought up, Anna, is that, I mean, even if he does have say he does have victories. He's got a victory with Ford. We'll see what happens with Stellantis and GM. But, I mean, do you think the victory with Ford is enough where he could start maybe rallying people at Tesla, maybe Rivian, maybe other EV plants? Because if the EV portion is carved out of this deal, then maybe if he makes hay with Tesla and Rivian or other EV makers, maybe then he can come back to the table with the big three.
Potentially, although this is more of a long game for sure in trying to rally those other companies. I mean, getting Tesla to unionize would be a lot of work. Rivian, they've been in there for about a year. Mm-hmm. They have not held a vote, but I do know that there's been some groundwork trying to be laid there. There's about 8,000 workers in Normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I don't know. Jeff and I are a little bit on different ends on this. I do think that GM has been pretty enthusiastic about the transition to EVs, and they've been pretty transparent about what their plans are. I don't think they have a lot of time to sit here and negotiate. I don't think they will. I mean, I'll be curious to see when we come back to this story next week, as they're watching Ford workers walk away from that picket line and get back in their plants.
57,000 workers going back to work.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of pressure for them. And I will say, too, in regards to the temp workers, those workers were really, really low paid. Mm-hmm. So 150% sounds like a lot. I think the point that the UAW was trying to make there was that these automakers were bringing in these temp workers for long periods of time and not hiring them on as full-on workers. And that's what they took issue with. So I don't know. I think it's an issue for the union of fairness. So I could see them sticking to their guns on that one. I don't know what of all will come through on the other deals, but I do think the deals will come through quicker than you think. That's just my opinion. But.
No, I agree. I think that because it sort of forces their hand a little bit in terms of Stellantis and GM.
I guess I was just really surprised, too, that there was nothing in these discussions with Ford about job training for those who are working on gas-powered vehicles right now to be transitioned over to the EV side. Yeah. That would have been a bigger sticking point for me than some of these other gains that they feel like they've made.
Well, and it's also good timing amidst reports that we've had or we've seen about fatigue on the picket line. There were multiple reports about upon hearing the news, a lot of Ford workers were happy and relieved, understandably so. This is week 6. Mm-hmm. Some of the finer details, we mentioned some of these at a top level, but workers, like you said, are going to get a 25% general wage increase plus a cost of living raise that's going to put the pay increase over 30% to above $40 per hour for the top scale assembly plant workers. This will be by the end of the contract. Previously, Ford, Stellantis, and GM had all offered 23% pay increases. When the talks initially started, Ford came in at 9%. Mm-hmm. So it's incredible that they made it to that 25% number and over 30% at the end of the contract. Assembly workers are going to get 11%, almost equal to all of the wage increases workers have seen since 2007 combined. This is all according to UAW VP Chuck Browning. He was the chief negotiator with Ford. And again, the issue around the annual the bonuses. So it's not that a pension was brought back, but it was weird because they didn't give a lot of details, but it was a bonus when you retire and then annual bonuses for retirees. So it's like a pension, not calling it a pension. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see a little bit more about how that works. And then they also talked about, I don't know if you guys read into it, if there was any more detail, but just changes to the 401k program for those who are, after 2007? Those don't have a pension. So they are making changes to kind of help set the workforce up after retirement as well. I'm interested to see what these annual bonuses are.
Yeah, I think once you see more details, it seems like the ratification is kind of a slam dunk.
Yeah,
but they do have to still vote on it as we're discussing it right now. So it will be interesting to see if more details do come out because those are things I'd definitely be interested in, and like for working hours and things like that too.
Mm-hmm. If you had to bet, I'm just thinking the 32-hour work week maybe didn't make it. That's just if I'm a betting man.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, our next most popular story: bottle of most sought after Scotch whiskey to be auctioned. Next month, a 96-year-old single malt with an estimated value of $1.4 million will be auctioned. The Macallan Adami 1926 will come under the Sotheby's hammer in London on November 18th. Advanced bidding begins next week, so get ready. Get the credit cards out. Another version of the Macallan 1926 was sold in 2019 for about $1.8 million, a record for any bottle of wine or spirit. Sotheby's global head of spirits, Johnny Fowle, says it is the one whiskey that every auctioneer wants to sell because commission, and every collector wants to own because, well, I'm not exactly sure. After being aged in sherry casks for 60 years, only 40 bottles were made. This is the first bottle to go up for sale that has undergone reconditioning by the distillery, including a new cork and applying fixed labels. Jeff, I know that every once in a while these stories come up, right? Where there's just an insanely priced bottle of et cetera, typically whiskey. And I know that we all kind of say the same thing, right? Just like, why? But one thing I was curious about with this is, so it was reconditioned. I was surprised that didn't drop the value more, and that they kind of got to go in and fix it up a little bit and refurbish it. And I was surprised that didn't ding the value a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree. I don't know. This is one of those where first of all, the whole story here is pretty interesting. The legacy of these bottles of whiskey. I mean, in 66, when they uncorked them, like, how can you not drink a 40-year-old bottle of whiskey? I mean, this must have been incredible.
Incredible self-control.
I mean, I don't know how you don't do that, but they didn't. And I can't see the allure with these cars. I know, like, Anna gets frustrated with these supercars and something else that generate these ridiculous numbers. At least you can sit, even if you're not going to take it on the road, even if it's not street legal, you can at least sit in the car and enjoy and appreciate the engineering and look at it maybe as a piece of art.
Yeah. Indefinitely.
It's a bottle of booze, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I just cannot wrap my brain around just collecting unopened bottles of alcohol. Like, I don't know. I just cannot get there. And then the fact that you've got this, how tempting must it be constantly to have anything that you could open, but you don't?
Yeah.
Like, to have this just sitting there would drive me nuts. And I wonder, what does that taste like at this point? I mean, 100 years old.
I got a feeling it doesn't.
It's gonna be like vinegar or something.
Doesn't
right?
meet expectations. Yeah. Also, I know that hopefully whoever wins this keeps it under lock and key, because that's the one that the kids get into and like slowly fill it half and half with like I just
water.
drank half the bottle, a little water, and finally like dad gets into it. I'm a $2 million bottle. Good thing I got to drink my sorrows because my kids just crashed my rare supercar.
Poor guy.
I know. Your thoughts on this example of how sick wealth will once again land an incredibly rare bottle of whiskey in someone's personal collection.
Whatever. I mean, like, I'm not a liquor connoisseur by any means. So for me, the most interesting thing about this bottle was the label.
Yeah.
Because
of the artist.
Because you're a vintage piece of art, which is pretty cool. As for the whiskey, so it prompted me to look into the prospect of whiskey as an investment, which is a bit complicated, apparently. So in April, The Guardian published a report about how they said young investors were increasingly being targeted on Instagram with schemes to buy their own whiskey casks.
Oh.
Because it's sort of an unregulated area that has become, their quote, awash with misunderstanding, misconception, and occasionally fraud. So basically, they said that for every incident of, for an example, there was a 1988 Macallan cask that was sold for $1 million at auction after originally having been bought for just $5,000, 5,000 British pounds. So they say for every one of those, there's like, thousands of other cases where casks of whiskey are being sold unwittingly to investors that are either low quality or maybe they don't even exist. They're just being told that they're stored somewhere because, you have to keep it stored for like 30 years. So just come check back in 30 years.
Yeah. Which one's mine? That one. Which one? It's back there.
One of those.
Yeah.
But then they find that their money's gone and there's nothing to be sold. And experts also added that whiskey doesn't always go up in value. So it's really sort of a volatile commodity. So they don't, there's no guaranteed return on that. But so I think, view this story as an interesting one to observe. This ridiculous, as you said, like super wealth and the problems they must have going to this auction and just being super nervous because what if they don't win?
I don't know if I'm going to get it.
I
Am
know.
I willing to go to 1.5?
Should I? So I don't know, but it's not a reason to potentially pursue this very volatile category. It's not a great investment. Like during the pandemic, I think some of this stuff started to come back up, like investing in gold, investing in wine, and like people started to talk about like crypto, obviously, like these other things outside of the stock market. Do not buy casks of whiskey is my point.
Gotcha. Well, and I know that, when I win a casual auction and all of a sudden some sort of like rare clown artifacts are shipped to my house, I know that if I don't get there in time to open it first, I have some explaining to do.
That's true.
So I can't imagine just like walking home like, honey, I did it. I won it. And just like, how much did it cost? Let's not worry about that. Or how we're going to keep the house. I feel like people collect them for different reasons, right? Like, I have a collection of unopened bottles for myself that, either have sentimental value or just random things. Like I have an unopened bottle of the first run of Proper 12 because at one point in my life, I thought Conor McGregor was an interesting person. This was before, Yep. Yeah. And then, I have one of an early run of the Skull vodka from with like a signed certificate from Dan Aykroyd, stuff like that, where it's just like
he's doing this.
Well, I'm not like doing it. It was just like it's interesting. But I also have like rail gin that an old CEO gave to me, and I just haven't opened it because it's like I call it my deathbed collection. Like I'm opening everything once they tell me I've got like X amount of time, and then I'm going for it.
So did they send you like a photo of your cask of whiskey that you bought in Ireland?
No, I'm pretty sure it's there. I'm pretty sure it's there. For only
Scotland.
$10 a day, I have that casket. Or cask.
I also know I could buy 30,000 bottles of 12-year-old Jameson for the same amount as this one.
That's pretty good.
I think I'm going to go that route.
30,000 and change. One thing that it made me think about was the team behind this, right? Can you imagine if you were the manufacturers or the distillers, the people working on these, and then all of a sudden one day you find out that one of the bottles you made is worth $1.5 million, just like, I knew I should have grabbed one on the way out.
Hey, David, the people who made this whiskey are dead.
Yeah.
What was it? 1926? They could be 103. I mean, what was it? The last person that
How
was
old
like...
were they when they made the whiskey?
Babies. Tiny babies.
Tiny whiskey making
that they
babies.
sat on top of the casks to like rock it as part of the fermenting process.
Okay, so they must be really upset right now.
Gotta stop saying casket. They are just so angry. Or maybe, okay, fine. They're kids. It also made me think about, because, I'm not a whiskey guy. I mean, I'm a whiskey guy, especially this time of year, but like I'm more of a gin guy. I'm like, there has to be an expensive gin out there that rivals this $1.5 million whiskey.
He's going to buy it.
It's not actually. Well, I mean,
if it's like $1,500, he's going to buy it because it's going to go up in value.
It's
undoubtedly.
I don't know if it's going to go up, but so according to the Guinness Book of World Records,
Gary changed the credit cards.
Shut down
she
David's
actively is. Like,
eBay account.
I can feel my phone blowing up. Just like there have been changes to your account. So it's called a Morris 64, and it's the world's most expensive gin. And I know that you guys maybe have read it already. Like no new record has been set. It was set in 2018. I mean, if you haven't looked at it, you want to take a guess at what it was?
How old is it?
It would. I don't know. I don't know the age of it.
Does gin get better with age?
I mean, I haven't let it age much in my house. I'd say that at most my gins are aged about a month.
So this is 1.4 million. This one we're talking about.
The one we're talking, yeah.
So your gin,
record-setting gin.
Record-setting gin. I'll go with like $500,000.
Yeah, sounds about right.
$4,600.
Oh, gin. Sorry.
Yeah, it's
sorry,
like,
bud.
and anytime you look it up, it's just like gin, commonly known as like the poor man's drink, or commonly known as a cheap liquor. Yeah, $4,634.82 randomly.
According to this, unlike wine, bottled gin doesn't get better with age. That's what
I mean. I can believe it.
It doesn't go off, but it's just like
yeah. So
it tastes the same. I don't know.
Unfortunately, most of my deathbed collection is mostly gin, so it's not looking good in terms of an investment.
Gin and action figures.
Well, yeah. It's once those Hasbros take off, we're buying a new home, baby. I don't know. It's it also made me think, like, do you ever think these people that are making that, do they think they're making something that they know is going to be special? Like, do you think they can imagine the potential worth?
Well, these were, because I mean, they
There's
only
only
made 40 of them.
yeah.
So I mean, there was definitely, I mean, not to this level.
Yeah.
But there was some thought to it, I'm sure.
I don't know. I just think it's kind of a cool association. Like, hey, you know, I made that $4,600 bottle of gin.
Still an accomplishment. I
Yeah.
mean, you know,
Oh yeah.
it's a lot of pine needles.
Yeah. Once those pull tabs start hitting, we're going after this Morris 64. Whoever's got me in Secret Santa. All right. Our
Get
next.
you a 40th share.
He wants to break this record so bad I can feel it.
What?
Like-
oh, for the gin?
Like you're just gonna buy a bottle of gin for $5,000 just to get the record.
Just, I mean, when it comes to Guinness World Records, that's a pretty easy one.
If somebody tells David, I bet you can't.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like you're
I'll
just
have it done by next week's
at the
podcast.
liquor store.
If somebody like passively aggressive was like, so David, there's this really expensive bottle of gin. I mean, you probably aren't
Yeah.
interested in it. You probably wouldn't do that.
No, they if they said like, oh, that's real cute, then the fire would be lit. But you're right, to make the Guinness Book of World
You
Records.
could do it.
Yeah.
But like it would be funny if you're at the liquor store and they're like, that will be $27 and you're like, take $5,000.
I'll give you 5,000.
Write it down.
I need a receipt and I need it authorized. All right. That is an expensive bottle of aviation worth every penny. Our next most popular story this week, robots make slackers out of their human colleagues, a report suggests. A new study in Frontiers of Robotics and AI says humans who work with robots are more likely to slack off on the job. Really, much of the work discusses the virtues and challenges of teamwork. Some perform well while others hide behind their work. The strongest and most motivated carry the weight. In the experiment, workers were asked to find defects in circuit boards. Half of them were told that the boards were inspected already by a robot named Panda. The other group was told that their boards had not been inspected yet, be it person or Panda. The workers who thought they had a robot counterpart spotted fewer errors in the parts, despite spending just as much time on the task. The researchers described this phenomena as, quote, social loafing, where humans take the easy way because they know someone will take care of them. The experts say the study should serve as a cautionary tale to manufacturers and distributors, pointing out that rapidly automating industrial settings could lead to complacency around safety. And I guess, regardless of the entire story, Jeff, one thing that we see on a weekly basis is that we certainly don't need more complacency when it comes to safety.
Agreed. I think it's interesting. The more of these articles we have talking about robotics, there's always a connection to the human factor. And it's really with all of these different technologies. And what it comes down to is they call it social loafing. To me, reading this, it was more just about being a human being. Yeah. Whenever there's a redundancy for accountability, people's like attention to detail drops. I think that's just human nature. I don't think it's even intentional a lot of times. So I don't know if I'm willing to go as far as, at least from the headline, some of the assumptions they were trying to make is, well, robotics make people not work as hard. And I think that really goes back to the importance right now we have of getting the right people in the right place. Because there are definitely some people who are always going to take advantage of the work environment in whatever way possible, okay? Leaving early, coming in late, taking longer. I mean, all that kind of stuff that just happens. And I think in this case, I just get nervous about these types of conversations because even in the article, the researchers talked about the fact that, well, this could just be a situation where if they knew someone else checked it, they're not going to look at it as hard because, again, there's that shared responsibility. So that can also be part of it. I just don't like it when we start talking about some of this stuff because this gives fuel to some of those who are saying robots are going to take our jobs and we got to watch out. We can't let all this new technology in here. No, it's finding the right way to supplement that and complement each other because human beings and all this automation, robotics, technology, that's what it's meant to work together. I think when we're in this era now of skills gap and losing all this legacy information that the machine whisperers have in terms of running a plant more efficiently, more safely, hopefully, we're just doing a better job of documenting it and also finding, again, the right people. And it goes back to not just hiring the right people, but having the right person in place that's hiring those people as well and putting more focus on those types of elements and also training people to use this technology the best way. Not saying, hey, David, you know what? This AI it's going to write all your articles for you, as opposed to saying, hey, David, this AI, it can help you do a lot better research. It can be more thorough in presenting you with as much information as possible to put out a better article.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this kind of said to me. And, the headlines kind of get frustrating sometimes.
I did not expect you to come on the side of the social loaf. I'm like...
I'm saying we don't social loaf. I don't think it's a thing.
It's and now that we're shedding a little bit more light on this, I just hope that people in shops across the nation can start asking people, hey, do you want to be a machine whisperer or do you want to be a social loaf? Just managers out there, get it out.
Check the box.
Get it out there, yeah.
I like it.
We're getting close to review time here for people that turn the calendar, all right? Social loaf in the cons. I need
Social
to see
loafers need not apply.
Anna, I'm glad to finally see an actual term associated with all the deadbeats I've ever worked with in a group project.
Oh man, that was such a great term. I was like, where was this in college?
Yeah. Just like, all right, Aaron, I know you were a social loaf. Like, I'm glad we're still Facebook friends, so I can passively aggressively just send you this article.
Yeah, send it. You should send it.
Aaron dared David to buy a 5,000 bottle of gin.
Yeah.
He won't.
While I'm drinking that gin, that's when I send that link. So what are your thoughts on this study? I mean, do you think that it helps reinforce the argument that, people push back automation because it's just going to make the remaining workforce lazy?
I don't know. I mean, it was the study was interesting to review as an industry observer, but I agree with Jeff that it really comes down to redundancy. I don't know that it's necessarily the robot or the human, because if you look at the article itself, or the report, I guess, the research paper, they do say that there's data out there that contends that human workers working alongside you, it's the same phenomenon. I mean, social loafing applies to whoever's there, albeit human or robot.
Yeah. This the next level will catch it in QC.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was maybe a little bit of a reach to extrapolate from the data that manufacturing environment would become more unsafe. And for a few reasons, like, there's a ton of data out there that says the exact opposite of that, right? Yeah. That if you automate certain tasks like operating rotating machinery, which is very dangerous, predictive analytics that can prevent an explosion or a fire from happening, for example, like, not to mention all of the ergonomically disastrous tasks that there are involved on a plant floor, to like remove those from the mix. It's hard for me to see that as like in any way coming close to a net safety loss, just because people are like maybe not doing as great of a job spotting errors in this one specific scenario. So to me, that was like, and once you read the fine print of the report where they're like, oh, actually this happens too if like Jeff's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, well then what does this data tell us then, And then I think the other notable question to me that this raised is perhaps around the narrative of robotics in just generally culturally now, how all automation seems to be painted with this brush of AI all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I think people are starting to get this impression that all robots are like somehow superior to humans in their capabilities. And that's just not the case when you look at most industrial robotics applications, the way that they're applied in the industry right now. Like, these are machines that are programmed to function in very repetitive ways by and large. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that machine learning is not coming to this magnitude, but I think right now, like, you can't assume a robot knows more than a very exact set of parameters.
Yeah.
But based on this cultural discussion around robotics, like, you wouldn't know that. It's like, oh, a robot is doing it? Oh, well, they are going to catch everything because robots are so much smarter than us. Yeah. That's not really how they're being applied in manufacturing right now. So I think that's the other challenge here, is just trying to to refocus that narrative around what industrial robots do and what they're capable of, and not just give people this, I don't know, just the way we talk about AI now. It's like you said, it's coming for humanity. It's coming for our jobs. AI is going to be able to outsmart us in the next 15 minutes. Like, It's not really what's happening.
There's a lack of appreciation for the human element in all of that stuff. With all this robotics, like we ran that article, I think, David, actually was your story about Amazon bringing in robots for their least favorable tasks or the most boring tasks or whatever the case is. And that's a perfect example. First of all, you need somebody to identify where to place the robots. Then you also need to make sure the robots are doing the right stuff. There's so much timing and so much connectivity involved and so much technology involved with just setting up those robots and monitoring them. You obviously need to have a human in place to do the QA. So
yeah, that was a regular podcast contributor Ben Munson's piece.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
Oh well, and it's doing so well that I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about it next week.
Oh.
A couple of things. One, Anna, your point on AI. I am surprised we have not seen a buzzword like penetrate the industry like we have with AI.
Yeah.
To the point where I've had conversations with people that think AI and automation are interchangeable. Mm-hmm. And they're asking me questions about AI. And I'm like, hold on a second. You're not asking me about AI. You're asking me about automation and how that'll change the industry. But they don't know that. That's crazy how the two have been kind of combined. And it's a complete misnomer. The other is the participants of the study. All right. Now, I want to know what kind of gig economy workers volunteered for this study. And they're just like, hey, I'm just here for a paycheck, man. And, they already got $4,000 to get there. And they're like, all right, I need you to look at this part and tell me what's wrong with the circuit board. But a robot already did it. And he's like, got it.
Yeah.
Just like hanging out for a little bit. Like, what's he doing? He's mostly on his phone. But so I'm just curious. I'm just curious who was a part of the study.
It's millennials' fault.
I mean,
blame it on them.
Definitely.
I mean, but that's like a decent point also that like, what are the consequences of getting it wrong? Is this your regular job?
Yeah.
Or are you just there doing what you know is an experiment?
Yeah. Well, and so that's a point to me was like, maybe if you showed that the robot could be fallible, like what if the participant was told like, okay, a robot already went through these, but they missed 10. Mm-hmm. Just like a little bit more incentive to like, so that way it's not just, you're the like second layer, but a robot already did it. So don't worry about it. So the underperforming workers felt just as responsible for the task and satisfied with their work. That was one thing that I was surprised with. Mm-hmm. Just like the workers who kind of mailed it in, they're like, job well done. Like, and had like job satisfaction, just like, what'd you do? I sat around and I looked at these parts for a while, but I really put in the time today. According to Auterion, which is a Swiss company that makes software that manages robot fleets and workforces, had a couple of numbers that I just wanted to throw out there. They say 86% of Americans believe mobile robotics will be integrated into more companies in the next 5 years. Nearly 40% already work with robots. 82% favor mobile robots for high-risk jobs and mundane tasks, and 70% would participate in their workplace offering training or retraining for managing and or programming robotic processes. So I understand that this is a company with an incentive that wants to roll out more robot fleets, but there's a lot of support for robots out there. And I think that if they're used in the appropriate applications by the appropriate people and programmed correctly, they can stand to make a really big impact. Or you could just put them on the shop floor next to the guy and just know he's going to become a social loafer. Or sorry, what is it?
No, you got it.
Social loafer? Yeah. Okay. And we didn't even touch on how they randomly named the robot Panda.
Why Panda?
I don't know. Was it black and white? Maybe?
I don't know.
Was there even a robot, or did they just say a robot already went through it?
No, they just said that. There was no panda. Panda is just...
Panda's fake.
Panda's fictitious
So
bear.
they created a fake robot named Panda.
It doesn't... I don't think it was even shaped like a bear.
Do you have like an issue with that? Or
It just doesn't make sense to me. It's a curious piece of trivia. Just like, no. The robot needs a name. We're calling it Panda.
I mean, we've already called one Baxter.
Well, Baxter's maybe a little bit more authoritative. Maybe if they didn't give it such a soft name, the people wouldn't have mailed it in. Just like, you name
Grizzly.
it. Yeah, that's right. You name it after a cuddly little bear.
Is it bear-shaped?
And it must have very cute ears that obviously flop whenever you get it right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, it did a bad job.
Our most popular story this week, Panda. Elon Musk says Tesla, quote, dug its own grave with the Cybertruck. Tesla CEO Elon Musk tried to temper investor excitement over the company's latest EV. During an earnings call this week, Musk said Tesla will face, quote, enormous challenges with scaling production and reaching cash flow positivity with the Cybertruck. He says it could be another 18 months before it becomes a significant cash flow contributor. Musk said, quote, "We dug our own grave with the Cybertruck." He went on to say that special products in general are incredibly difficult to bring to market, to reach volume, and to be prosperous. So just kind of said what everybody knows. Tesla plans to make 250,000 Cybertrucks per year. Musk says or warned the company that they likely won't be able to reach those production numbers until 2025 at the earliest. Jeff, surprisingly, now I know that this is a man with a lot of bombast, but it was weird that he came out tempering expectations rather than being like, we thought it was going to be 250. We're doing 500 next year.
That's this normal route. He was in a weird place for this whole call. It seems like he was, I don't know. I mean, he's got some pretty serious SEC investigations coming after him. I don't know if that was weighing on his mind or what, but like Business Insider actually grabbed 14 quotes and like, he actually said this on the call.
Okay.
This was one of them. He's like, you said about digging our own grave. He's like, no one does that better than us. So very strange, especially for something, again, that you're trying to build appreciation for because orders have dropped in terms of advance orders for the Cybertruck. I mean, when you look at scale and where they want to get, even at 250,000, just to offer some perspective, that's like a third of the number of F-150s that Ford makes every year. So they're still not, they're maybe, peeking around the corner in terms of getting on the same level of some of these bigger OEs. But again, throughout this whole call, here's some of the other stuff he said. He says, it feels like we're digging a tunnel with a spoon at times when he was talking about Tesla's cost-saving efforts. So nothing better when you're talking to your stockholders about how you're going to cut costs and saying, it's kind of like digging a tunnel with a spoon.
Yeah.
So, what does that tell you?
So, we should just watch some of these SEC filings and see if he does a huge purchase of shares after,
It's just weird. Here, these are the other ones. I'm just going to read these next three. People are reading about wars all over the world. Buying a new car tends not to be front of mind. Like, what is he doing here?
I mean, that's fair. That's the one that has made the most sense, at least.
Well, maybe, but if you need a vehicle has become almost a commodity, it's a higher priced item, but it's almost a commodity item. As sensitive as we want to be about things in the Gaza Strip and in Ukraine, if you need a new car, you're going to buy
You need a car.
Yeah. Here's the other. I'm still somewhat scarred by 2009 when GM and Chrysler went bankrupt. That's 14 years ago, but it's seared into my mind with a branding iron because Tesla was just hanging on by a thread during that time. I don't want to be going at top speed into uncertainty. I thought he was the guy who subscribed to the whole go fast and break things.
Yeah.
So now he's like, hey, whoa. Got to backpedal here a little bit.
That is his go-to example whenever he's talking about, pumping the brakes a little bit, is the bailout.
Well, yeah, and here's the last one. I apologize if I'm perhaps more paranoid than I should be.
Oh.
I have PTSD from 2009 big time and 2017 through 19 were no picnic either. That was tough going. So it's just a weird stuff to hear from this guy. Again, it's an earnings call. I understand he's trying to temper expectations, but isn't that where you kind of backpedal and you do talk about economic conditions, but also say, we got it. We're under control. Now, he did have some other things, some weird sayings about how Tesla, it's rocky seas, but Tesla's got a sturdy boat or something like that.
Yeah.
But just very out of character for him to say stuff like this. So it just, man, it's a head scratcher that this is the guy that's leading this company. And does he still want to? I mean, where was he coming from?
I feel like someone needs to be in charge, making sure that maybe he gets a good night's sleep before these earning calls.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, what is that? He only sleeps like 1 hour a day?
I think 3, but yeah.
It might be snowballing a little bit.
But that was
there.
pre-Twitter. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
X.
I'm sorry, X.
Formerly known as
X,
Twitter.
of course. Yeah.
Yes.
There were reports that analysts were saying that they thought he was near tears on this call.
Yeah.
Which is like really alarming. And again, to your point, like not really a boost of confidence from a CEO that's got things under control.
Yeah.
So when he cited the enormous challenges that were inherent in the Cybertruck, he said that they were fundamental to the nature of newness. Fair enough. But you know what else is fundamental to the nature of newness? Being new. And I think like a little fanfare is good, but there is a limit, and I think that Tesla is reaching that with the Cybertruck. More than 1 million people started placing pre-orders for this vehicle in 2019.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like, that was before we even heard the word COVID-19. Like, so much has changed, not just with the economy, but the auto industry. And if you look back at when this was teased, he was talking about how he was filling a gap in the market for an electric pickup truck. Fast forward, like that's just not true anymore. In the context of today's market, you have companies that already build the nation's top selling pickup trucks that are doing this. You've got a EV Silverado, you've got an EV F-150. It's not really that novel anymore, even though the design is very unique as far as it goes as a pickup truck and an EV. Like, those are being made now.
Yeah.
So, and not to mention the fact that those competitors are slowing down a little bit right now because they are saying that EV pickup truck demand right now is sluggish.
Slowed, yeah.
So that's like a little bit of a scary prospect as well. But I would say, like, secondly, there are some new reports that I read yesterday in like some Tesla forums that were talking about people who were getting contacted about their pre-orders to fulfill their orders. Okay. And so keep in mind that when this was first launched, it was supposed to be like an affordable pickup truck, EV pickup.
Well, and like a reservation was only like $100, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, like 2 million people gave Tesla a really nice interest-free loan for a long time. But but people are starting to pull their orders, I think, and at the time, they were pitched as being like 40,000, 50,000, 70,000 trim or something. The highest trim was like a tri-motor. It was it 500 miles of range, all kinds of stuff. The person that in this Tesla forum and a few other people apparently chimed in, this was reported by some auto publications, said that they were being offered their deal at like $100,000 now. Okay. So the first like 500 are going to be hand assembled. They're the tri-motor version. So, but look at that, even coming from a $70,000 price point to now $100,000.
Yeah.
If you're coming in at the $40,000 price point, that's still like a $15,000, $16,000 increase if you want to go up like 40% on that. That's a big difference. Mm-hmm. And not to mention the fact that he's saying, like, I don't think I can get these out until 2025 minimum. We're not going to be at full production until the latter half of the decade. What world are you living in where you're saying this stuff and thinking that people are going to hang on with you?
Yeah, it scares people away, right? Like, I mean, that was one of the biggest questions I asked was, would you want the first Cybertruck? Now that you already know problems that Teslas have out of the gate where they're kind of just like, get them out there and we'll fix them with over-the-air updates. And now you have Musk coming out saying like, okay, it's like super not easy and we're like having a lot of problems, man. So like, let's all just chill. Like,
I know.
But that's the thing. If he said that, he's got a good reasons to pump the brakes here, right? Not like grab the emergency brake and like, do a Fast and Furious skid at the end of the statement here. Because all of these companies, and I think you alluded to it, Ford is seeing some struggles. Like, they're seeing some things when they got out there. People are concerned about the range. They're concerned about how it works in colder weather. Use those as reasons to pump the brakes, not world wars and, economic depression.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think he's staring into a black hole right now. I honestly there's just so many variables working against him. And also to try to come to market with this incredibly inflated price when you're, maybe you can do that if you're a premium brand, but Tesla's showing us with this other models that they're like price cutting like crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to convince people to pay $100,000 before self-driving add-on? I just don't see people, like a lot of people doing that.
We really have to see, is it just going to be the novelty of a Cybertruck, or are there going to be true features that people will demand? Because so far, we haven't heard anything coming out of the Cybertruck that separates it from any other EV truck out there other than some funky lines.
Stainless steel body.
Stainless steel body.
Scrap that, man.
Well, it'll be interesting. We'll see it. We'll see it in about a month because Tesla has officially confirmed that deliveries are going to begin in November 2023. And there's going to be a customer delivery day. It's going to be an event on November 30th for the Cybertruck. So we'll see what comes rolling off that line, and we'll see how many.
Yeah, we know for sure that's going to happen because Elon Musk has never overpromised and underdelivered.
He's going to deliver it to himself at SpaceX, blast it to Mars.
Can the windshield handle that?
Not sure. Still up in the air.
Let's throw a meteor at it.
Let's throw a pebble.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I guess I'm interested to see what happens, but one thing I was drawn to I was interested by the Cybertruck because of the original price point and the fact that it is just simply different. But I mean, there's no way that you can listen to the chatter you're hearing from the head of the company and not just think like, I'm overpaying for a lemon.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's like they're pre-selling lemons. All right. Before we jump into In Case You Missed It, we have another word from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by Rockwell Automation, which wants to help you gain unlimited HMI visualization options. This new podcast, now available on demand, download it now, highlights Rockwell's recent rollout of FactoryTalk Optix, a new cloud-enabled HMI product. According to the company, this latest offering centers on improving processes, efficiency, and deliverables by providing new levels of collaboration, scalability, and interoperability. Download it now. All right, in case you missed it.
You have just crushed that reading today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good work.
Thanks. Now let me stumble on everything else going forward.
Perfect.
That's how I like to respond to positive feedback. Let's move on to In Case You Missed It. The story is maybe not as popular on our website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what do you have for us?
I selected the story titled Regulators Suspend GM's Recently Approved Robotaxi Service. This is, of course, in regards to the Cruise Robotaxi service.
Yeah.
So in a huge setback for driverless cars, California's DMV has revoked the license of a Robotaxi service owned by GM after determining that its driverless cars that recently began transporting passengers throughout San Francisco are a dangerous menace. These were the AP's words. I was surprised that they got this editorial with it, but so the DMV announced an indefinite suspension of the service just 2 months after another state regulator, the Public Utilities Commission, approved an expansion that authorized around-the-clock rides through San Francisco. Police and fire officials have reportedly been noting the alarming trend of the vehicles impeding routes during emergencies, not to mention a Cruise Robotaxi recently ran over a pedestrian who had been hit by another vehicle driven by a human. But the Cruise then pinned the pedestrian under one of its tires after coming to a stop. So obviously this isn't the first time an autonomous vehicle has been involved in a collision with a pedestrian. But that doesn't make it, I think, a collateral damage that people are, comfortable with assuming in this race towards a technology that increasingly the public doesn't necessarily want. To that end, a fresh study done by J.D. Power said that consumers are losing confidence in fully automated self-driving vehicles. And whoever you want to blame for that, I don't know. But let's be clear that confidence wasn't that high to begin with. So they're saying, J.D. Power is saying that just 37% of those surveyed said they are confident riding in a driverless vehicle, down 7 points in just 2 years. And while they do contend that buy-in is much higher in markets where people have actually used them, that opportunity is in very limited markets so far. Now there's one less option in San Francisco. Maybe it's a good time to take a break and reassess how this can and should move forward in a way that's not pinning people underneath its tires.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I know when Uber's program, when one of their vehicles hit a pedestrian and that person actually died, they took a really long break.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what happens with GM. I know they have a lot of money tied up in this, but it seems like if these challenges are taking place to the extreme extent that they seem to be in this very congested city, maybe it's time to bring it back into the lab.
Well, I don't understand how product development, I get it that you need it on on live streets, I guess, but when did prototyping come off the test track, right? I don't understand why these car makers couldn't make simulated cities on their own campuses and not put so many people at risk. That's one thing. I don't know. I understand that we're trying to fast track a lot of this technology, but if people knew that some of these cars were having problems with pedestrians or flashing lights, why someone didn't just say like, hey, okay, we got 7 acres out back. We're just going to build this little safety town and see how it does with the fake people before we roll it out, in the city proper. Jeff, your thoughts on Cruise kind of hitting the brakes for a bit?
Good call. Probably didn't happen soon enough, in my opinion. It's a weird line to walk, right? Because you want to have these simulated environments, but how can you really simulate a city street? I think that's very almost impossible to anticipate every type of activity.
Yeah.
I think was more alarming to me is in a lot of instances, okay, not taking away from hitting people. Okay, that's a huge issue. I'm not trying to say that.
That's like the first one you simulate is just like, all right, walk in front of it. What do you mean? You made it. Walk in front of that thing. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's like day one testing.
But I mean, some of the other stuff that they were dealing with is people not getting dropped off. And then you're sort of like trapped in the vehicle going on these 2-hour rides, which should have been, 20 minutes to get home.
Yeah.
Those are obviously big issues too. So I think it is good to take a step back. We just see over and over again, whether it's Tesla, Cruise, Uber, all these other entities trying this autonomous vehicle stuff. We're not there yet. So whether it's the cameras, whether it's the software, whether it's everything talking to each other, take a step back. I think there may be opportunities to not eliminate the testing, but scale it back as opposed to putting a fleet of vehicles out there at bar time. Yeah. Have a couple of engineers running, early in the morning when there's less traffic, or things of that nature. We have seen this work though too. I mean, there's a semi route running right now in the southwestern part of the country that is working well.
Yeah.
So let's also glean from that a little bit. Maybe we can have a little bit more cooperation between some of these different entities and what they're doing to figure it out.
Well, and that semi route is doing the route autonomously, but in all the finer parts, it does
have a driver.
It has a driver. Yeah. So I don't know. It's because I do believe in a future with autonomous cars, and when we go too fast, it's the 2 steps back, right? Yeah. And it can get frustrating. Jeff, in case you missed it this week.
So kind of following up to last week when we were talking about all of those grid projects that were needed around the world in order to scale up. Story this week came out. The Biden administration announced a $3.5 billion in funding for 58 projects across the country to strengthen electrical grid resilience. It also talked about this is the largest federal investment ever in grid infrastructure, supporting projects that will harden electric systems and improve energy reliability and affordability. The federal spending combined with money promised by private partners could result in up to $8 billion in investment in the grid. This is great stuff, okay? This is very, very positive. When you go through the article, though, the things that it really talks about is hardening our electrical infrastructure to deal with a lot of the new extreme weather that's coming up. I'm not saying that's not important. That bleeds into all reliability. But I wish there was more stuff it was focused on expanding production. Now, it does get into renewable energies. It talks about really pushing solar and wind especially, and other renewable energy options. But when you look at $3.5 billion, as much as that is, and that's a historic amount to go into the grid at one particular time, that is going to go so fast. When you look at some of these projects, it's spelled out at $500,000 on their own for some of these specific areas. So, we'll see it in the Midwest with running some new lines. Lines are great. Renewable energy is great. Reliability in terms of strengthening the infrastructure, in terms of making sure stuff doesn't go down in bad storms or we don't have to deal with brownouts. I think we need something additionally focused almost specifically on generation. Because when we start talking about electric vehicles, we start talking about getting away from fossil fuels, and I'm not advocating more coal burning plants or anything like that, but I was surprised that there wasn't a greater focus on solar farms. There wasn't a greater focus on wind turbines or whatever the case may be, and not just putting them up, but then everything that takes in connecting them to our current grid more efficiently. I think that's a bigger issue too. So it's a great first step.
Yeah.
Definitely a thing that leads to the things that we want. But I can just see this going so fast. And this is just the type of investment we need to continue to make if we really want to get where we want to be in the future.
When it comes to these investments, it always reminds me of how everything seems really state of the art here in Madison, right? And when I go up north to my cottage, like 90% of the area doesn't have internet, still. And it's just so a lot of times when I think of the grid, EVs, stuff like that. Whenever I think about trying to adopt new technology, I always think like, oh, well, I won't be able to take it to northern Wisconsin where they still don't have internet yet. So, and it's just, it's good to see these investments, and hopefully it goes a long way to changing some of our grid problems, but there's still a long road ahead, in my opinion. Anna, your thoughts on the latest investment in the electric grid?
Yeah, I think it's a 1-2 punch a bit. I mean, they are talking about climate related challenges, right? But also just capacity. And, the article talks about how in extreme weather events, the infrastructure tends to go down because there's too much demand. The same applies to adding 100,000 cars to the electrical grid versus going to a gas station. There's going to be these surges in demand that are based on, all of that. And so I do think there's a lot of benefit there. I agree with you that, it sounds like a ton of money, $35 billion, but it will go fast.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that was not talked about too, and I know I'm maybe too close to this topic, is there wasn't a lot of talk about security. Now, maybe that falls into a different bucket, but that's also a big part as we expand our grid. I mean, every time you throw up a turbine or a sun farm, solar farm, there's connection points to that grid that become vulnerable from a security perspective too. So I hope that's one thing that's also sort of inherent to all this investment as well.
Yeah. What was the article that you covered last week? Didn't it say we needed like $3 trillion?
Globally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're headed there.
Good first step. Let's just keep it coming.
All right. I went seasonal. For in case you missed it, Halloween fans flames of raging candy corn debate.
It's raging.
Raging. I know it's raging anytime
It's definitely a debate in our household.
It is.
Is it?
We had, that's the reason I picked it, was because I was just at a neighborhood event and there was a little glass bowl of candy corn. I'm like, did you put this here just to fire people up? And I'm like, hold on, let's eat it and let's see who's on board and who's against it. And you get the scowls, and then you get a couple of guys that just give you the head nod. He's like, hey, I like it. Candy's candy. You're on. Jake and I are on the same team. So Brock's makes 30 million pounds of candy corn every year. The company says that's enough to circle the planet about 5 times. And that's an amazing stat. And that's just in one season. Fall, because man, if you think candy corn is like hated in season, just like break out a bag of this stuff in the off season. I mean, I like the idea of proposing like perhaps a Boxing Day candy corn or like a Memorial Day candy corn, but I just don't see it having legs. Last year, Brock's raked in $75 million of the $88.5 million in total candy corn sales. Brock's has tried other ideas to expand into other holidays and times of the year, like the turkey dinner mix that lasted about 2 years before it died. And we had the pleasure of sampling that one in the office.
Yeah.
And that was one that didn't die soon enough, because gross. So Katie Duffy, VP of Seasonal Candy for Ferrara, and Ferrara is Brock's sugar daddy, said, quote, I won't say that it was newsworthy, but perhaps, I would say that it was newsworthy, but perhaps not consumption worthy. And that is towards the turkey dinner mix, which just really reaffirming our experience. But, it made headlines. So the reason I chose the story is that sometimes a product carves out a niche that isn't scalable, and that's okay. Or at least it should be okay. I understand it. You have shareholders you're beholden to. You're part of a larger company like Ferrara, but $75 million and like whatever 90% of a market is, nothing to sniff at. Like, and I just think like there are other ideas like this that do have a clear cap or ceiling. And I mean, people shouldn't be scared away from them because they could still be quite lucrative. But it's okay to have a niche product, and it can still be a good deal. I also have some fun facts to go along with this, but Anna, in the raging candy corn debate, where do you stand?
I am pro candy corn, but only like 2 pieces, and then I'm done for the year.
Yeah, it's like a seasonal and
have like a 1.
Yeah. just bite the white tip off, throw the rest away.
Yeah. My parents keep I don't know if you've heard of this thing, but they keep like side-by-side bowls of candy corn and like, I think it's dry roasted peanuts.
Oh.
And if you eat them together, it tastes just like a Pearson's nut roll.
I had no idea. I can't wait to get home.
It's an experiment that you
see
should try.
that. All right.
Yeah,
I can see that.
It's the ingredients of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a solid snack.
So it's the dried roasted peanut and candy corn.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yeah, try it.
That's what I'm doing
All right.
tomorrow. That's it. Like that and National Breadstick Day.
Tomorrow's National Breadstick Day, so clear your calendar. You have a lot to do.
I have a banger of a day lining up for my day off. Jeff, where do you stand on candy corn and the possibility of branching out into other holidays such as Boxing Day or Memorial Day?
So first of all, I do not like candy corn. I liked it as a kid, and now it's just gross. And my wife loves it.
Yeah.
She loves it. It's one of her favorite things. She's watching her sugar intake now, but like that was definitely her big time snack this time of year. But I don't know why they didn't come up with like a red, white, and blue version for like the 4th of July.
Yeah. It
you do that?
seems simple.
Kind of like the rocket pop type thing.
Honestly, maybe they tried.
Yeah.
I mean, these seem like such slam dunks. I'm sure someone tried it and they're like, 0 sales.
Oh, hey, it's still gross.
Yeah.
No matter what color we make it.
Do you remember when you made the transition where like one day you had a piece of candy corn and you're like, oh, this part of me's dead
Yeah,
now.
I think it was like when I stopped trick-or-treating as a kid and then tried it again like as a teenager, and it was just like, wait a minute, this is trash.
Yeah.
Do they still make the pumpkins?
I think so.
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe that's accounting for it. Well, no, I don't know.
I used to get those on because my birthday being in October, I definitely have the pumpkins on the cake once in a while. So you
Oh.
liked them as a kid, and then you have them later like, this is just a ball of sugar. This is gross.
Yeah, well, it's definitely you knew like you went to Thanksgiving and the candy dishes were full of them at grandma's, and then when you went to Christmas and there was like they were on top, you're like, okay, grandma's just trying to clear them out of the pantry. Like we didn't get through a whole bag.
I liked it when grandma had the hard candy and you reach in there to get a piece and you couldn't pick it out.
All
'cause it
stuck
was just stuck in there.
Oh yeah, yeah. That like it blew my mind because I didn't know like as a kid that there was a line for me when it came to candy, and I was just like, I don't need that gross hard candy.
Not my brother. He'd get in there like with some silverware or something,
Just
start chiseling away.
chip
and
'em out of
grab it.
there.
Pulls the like the ice pick out of the ice
Yeah,
bucket.
but then he's like, look at this huge piece of candy I got here.
He invented the jawbreaker.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of inventing it, no one knows who invented the candy corn, but I did uncover a few other fun facts. According to legend, Wonderly Candy in Philadelphia first made it in 1888 in collaboration with George Renninger, who was a longtime employee. At the time, it was just called buttercream and chicken corn. Yum!
Chicken corn.
Don't know why they decided to rebrand that one. Later, the Golitz Confectionery Company, which became Jelly Belly, made a version that they called Chicken Feed. And Anna, for the packaging, they put a rooster on it.
Yes.
The boxes had a rooster, and the tagline was something worth crowing for.
Yes. They tried harder back then.
All right.
Brock's jumped into the this candy corn game in 1920 and has since become the market leader. You know, obviously, you guys know my penny candy choices that I like to make for Halloween candy.
So
gross.
terrible.
But one
Yep.
thing that I was thinking about
it's
doing.
abusive to the poor children that come to your door.
So I'm curious if this is abusive too, right? So we have a sick amount of candy, right? After Halloween, we wind up lining our snack table in the office with candy because it's just not, we can't physically go through it in our homes. So one thing I was thinking about was like the low cost toy. You know, I went down a deep Oriental trading wormhole and I had like eyeball bouncy balls, rubber snakes, and like the little army men, only they were zombies. And I thought I was onto something because I'm like, oh, here's something that the kids can play with a little bit longer than just eating like a single Kit Kat. And man, apparently that was just widely rejected. So I don't know. I was like, you know what? Okay, it'll be more sustainable. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Just hard no, just keep it to the candy.
Yeah, you can't do that to kids. It's as bad as giving a pencil.
It's also
had
not.
pencils
It's
in the
also not
cartoon.
more sustainable.
Well, sorry. I mean, I guess not more sustainable, but like in terms of teeth sustainability, yes. And it was something that they could actually use more than once.
Once.
I mean, that bouncy ball lasts until the animal eats it, or they try to eat it, and you have to take it away. Caden.
It's a cute try, David. It's
Yeah.
really cute.
Just like, just be a normal person and stop buying the Brock's mix And don't give anyone that Neapolitan square.
You get so much candy, like when you buy it per pound.
When it comes to Halloween.
No. You have the chance to start over. You moved into a new house. You're in a new neighborhood. Do not let that follow you.
I think I'm going to. It's going to be nothing but like Werther's and butterscotch.
Oof.
You are going to have so much toilet paper on your trees.
That's fine. That's fine.
So many eggs in your windows.
I mean, I could use a dozen right now. All right. Well, let's do our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, your final thoughts.
So on that note, Halloween is coming up. It's really soon. I have a ghost, a cat, and a Snow White that I will be escorting around the neighborhood. And the high temperature in Wisconsin on the night of Halloween right now is looking a balmy 37. So wish me luck when I start. I have a new appreciation for my own parents when I was a child, and they would try to put that coat on me. Oh, it's going to be tough. I'm already like trying to like pave the way and be like, hey guys, it will be cold. So start thinking of ideas. If you don't want to cover up your costume, what are we going to do?
Layers. Lots of layers.
37 degrees. That's like before the sun goes down.
Or you just got to
so cold.
You got to keep them moving or get the sugar in quick.
I guess. Yeah.
Just let them take the coat off when they run up to the house. And when they come back, got to put it on.
All right. Yeah, maybe.
That didn't work for me, but hey, maybe.
Well, piggybacking on your final thought, I have a dinosaur and a Pikachu.
Oh, nice.
And they are very excited. Very excited. But apparently, like, all the kids in the neighborhood get together and just become one roving gang of candy hungry fiends.
It's the best way to do it.
So I'm interested to see how that works out. And more than one parent came to me and said, like, hey, we drink during this. And I was just like, all right.
Yeah,
Like,
there you go.
Yeah, no problem. Just like, and thank you. Like, it wasn't like an invitation. It was just like, we drink during this.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
We know you're giving out crappy candy. So at least fit in one way here, buddy.
And just my other final thought was a simple note. I drove by a car this morning and the license plate said for shizzle. And sometimes you just got to give up the vanity plates after the time has passed. I mean, maybe it was ironic. Maybe it was ironic still that remains the plate. But sometimes the moment passes and you just got to go back to a normal plate or switch it up. Jeff, your final thought?
So last Saturday, I turned 48, which my daughters remind me I'm very old.
Congratulations.
Extremely old. So, but what was cool is they are also now at an age where they will actually do stuff with me on my birthday as opposed to me buying my own gifts type of thing. So they took me to an arcade. So it made me feel good that at 48, I could still have a lot of fun playing all these retro like arcade games and stuff like that. Playing Galaga in 1942 and, all right, 43. What is it?
What?
1943. There's both of them. So it was I think this was 1943. All of that good stuff in there. Had a blast. So I was very grateful for that even as I get super, super old, I can do all these kid things.
Well, and discover new things. The Star Wars game that you mentioned sounds incredible. Like,
it's incredible.
It was enough to get me to go there and try it out.
Yeah, because like the video games at home, I cannot do these shooter games and everything. I get lost. I cannot keep up with them. Yeah. But the arcade stuff, that I can do.
Do those games still slap, Jeff?
Oh, no, Anna. No.
They're awesome. I tell you what, if anybody wants to see one of these awesome Today Manufacturing can koozies, let us know what game you would play to the retro arcade. Again, my favorite is Galaga. I could play that for hours.
Dude, there's a Jurassic Park game where you're driving in the Jeep and you just got to mow down a bunch of kill crazy dinosaurs. I could play that for some time. That or the old school Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game.
That's the best one. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, and the old school X-Men game.
They do have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one, but I could not get on it. Like it was very highly.
Well, they're popular again now. Mutant Mayhem, reset the table.
They have the old school X-Men game at this arcade, but it's like on the wall on this huge screen. It's actually pretty awesome.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, before we get out of here and head to Geeks Mania immediately, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, if you want to email the podcast, just reach any of us at David, Jeff, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us live every Thursday. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.